Hi everyone, I'm going to be talking to you today about the second half of July and the full moon that we have coming up in Aquarius on the 29th. Now, as you will all know by now, July is a very big month for astrology. And we are going to, now Jupiter has moved into Leo, which it did on the 30th of June. We are going to see the second half of the year move even faster than the first. We are in the year of the fire horse, as we know. Jupiter is now in a very important fire sign of Leo. Jupiter, as you may know, takes about a year in each sign, but it is very accelerated in these 6 months because it moves to 27 degrees of Leo by December. So it moves virtually the whole sign in 6 months, and then it retrogrades, backtracks, and then moves direct again. So super speedy, so more important than ever to stay grounded, do breath work, whatever you need to do to create that sense of peace and calm and anchoring. Super important. Groundedness, bare feet on the grass, hug a tree, all of those very simple things, or do yoga or tai chi or qigong, breath work, that's very grounding too. So, and there's a feeling, and I know many of us are feeling this, of, we've had a very rapid build-up, we've had a build-up, an evolutionary build-up forever, but certainly there has been, as Dr. David Clements predicted, a very important evolutionary wave that came in through June, and we're still feeling that in July. And Stephen Burns, through his lens, was seeing that as a peak in the electrification of the Earth, and he's got some excellent videos covering that. But this electrification that is producing a lot of seismic activity, a lot of solar flares, a lot of solar activity in general. Try not to resist, because this is all very high frequency plasma, which we need to welcome in as evolutionary ingredients for this super important time. So what we're going to see, I think, and I don't know if you felt it, I've certainly felt it, very recently, as well as all the build-ups we've talked about over recent years. On the 12th of June, we had Uranus squaring the nodal axis, then we had the Cancer solstice, then we had that very important shutdown of the facility in Europe. And with each of those, I certainly felt an energetic lift. And I keep seeing it, I keep getting the image in my mind of a hot air balloon and the strings have been cut. So it's much easier now to move into those higher dimensions and move away from the contraction and the density. It doesn't mean it's a done deal and it's all easy, but it is much easier. The energies, the cosmic energies, are really helping us right now. And so what that means is that there's going to be an even more accelerated collapse and more chaos at that old world level, that old systems 3D level. And so you are going to see more of that. It's going to be more dramatic, it's going to be more colourful, it's going to be more extreme, it's going to be more pantomime. So just know that. So if you are anxious or fearful about that, you are going to quantum entangle yourself with that timeline, because increasingly there is this kind of no middle ground. You're either following the news and very entangled with all that distraction and craziness that's going on in the 3D world, or you're just saying, no, I'm going to follow a path of peace, joy, bliss, and love on this timeline. And as I say, I think energetically there's less and less middle ground. And of course, at any moment, people can change their frequency, but only you choose it. As I've said many times, only you choose your frequency. So as you will know, because every astrologer is talking about this, we've had this very, we still have to come actually as I'm filming this on the 12th of July. I'm filming it a few days early because I think the astrology for this month is so important. And again, not to say that July is what it's all about, and then we can go back to a more normal state at all. July is another initiation. It's a new ignitions and you lift off to a higher evolutionary level. So this basket, this unique configuration that everybody's talking about, and I've been sort of anticipating for the last couple of years, I would really recommend that you watch my video on that. It's very tightly operational from the 15th to the 25th, but it's going to be, apart from Jupiter, which moves on quickly, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto are going to stay in that tight configuration over the next 2 to 3 years. They're all at 4 degrees, coming up mid-July. Next year, they're at 6 degrees, especially in June, and Ceres replaces Jupiter, where the place Jupiter is. But you've really got to see it. So I don't want to repeat everything I've said there. It's quite a detailed video, but you can't kind of miss that and think you understand what's happening in July. So really, really important. Now, what is extraordinary as well about this basket is, if you consider the orbital periods of these different planets, Jupiter has a 12-year orbit, Uranus has an 84-year orbit, Neptune has a 165-year orbit, Pluto has a 248-year orbit, and yet they're all locking into exactitude at 4 degrees of their signs, as you will see from that basket video, which is extraordinary, just given the astronomy and the maths. It's just an extraordinary happening. And when you get exactitude in astrology, that gives great potency. That's why this is such a big deal. And also the aspects between them are very harmonious. So really would recommend you watch that. Now, in that video, or it might have been in my last update video, I was talking about one of the aspects being the opposition between Jupiter and Pluto, which you'll see in the charts I'm about to show you in a moment. And there are several themes around Jupiter and Pluto aspects. One of the themes I mentioned in that earlier video was where people have a Jupiter-Pluto aspect, even an opposition or a square, actually, it gives the potential very often for great wealth. Not always, but very often. If you look at the chart of Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, or if you even look at big banking institutes in America, at the time that they were incorporated, like Citigroup or Bank of America, they have Jupiter-Pluto aspects. It's extraordinary because Jupiter is big and expansive, and Pluto is often to do with, because it rules Scorpio, 8th, invested money, big money, sometimes dodgy hidden money, but big money. And so what that will highlight is the current inequality in society to an even greater extent, particularly because Jupiter is in Leo, which has to do with privilege and entitlement, and it's regal, so it's to do with celebrity and royalty and leadership in terms of leaders we may have, or people in the public eye we may have looked up to before, whereas Pluto in Aquarius is about the people. In a much more horizontal sense, the ordinary people, you and me. So this will highlight inequality, and you'll see in a chart in a while how that was pretty extreme, but frankly, I think it's pretty extreme now. Other themes which are going to come up with that, again, I've mentioned this in the past, is leadership. Because Jupiter in Leo could well highlight that sense of entitlement, privilege, narcissism, I've arrived so we can start now, all of the, the golden palace, as it were, of Louis XVI. We'll see in a moment. Jupiter was in Leo then, in France. And therefore there's great tension because of other aspects as well between all of that privilege and the ordinary people. Aquarius energy, Pluto and Aquarius. One of the big themes there is shifting the power to the people, but we have to step up to take our power. It's not going to be just given to us, not handed on a plate. And so another aspect, another theme of Jupiter-Pluto aspects is potentially a collapse in religious beliefs. That's a potential, maybe not for everybody, but certainly, for instance, the church has enormous wealth. There's so much gold in churches. And so that is going to be part of this sense of inequality that could come up as well. So this could fundamental challenge Pluto to current belief systems. Jupiter is to do with faith, so it could be religious belief systems. It could also be just belief systems in general, what we've believed about the world. And it could well be belief around issues to do with science and technology. Because Pluto, when it moves through a sign, tends to bring up a crisis quite early on in its movement through the sign around the symbolism of that sign. So, for instance, when it had moved into Capricorn in 2008, Capricorn is to do with big business, banking, we had the financial crisis. Aquarius is very linked to science and technology. And so, for instance, it's very clear to see there's a lot of pushback now on AI data centers because they're being built in certainly areas in America where there's already a water shortage. In many places there where they're being built, the amount of water and power and actually acreage, just footprint they're using, is larger than the village that they neighbour. And so there is a lot of pushback. They use billions of gallons of water to cool them down. They use a lot of power, a lot of electricity, and those things are not in replete supply. And so crisis around that. I also think there's going to be a crisis around science. That's happening already. Just watch this space. So the other aspect of this is that I believe I certainly mentioned it in the conversation with Stefan. By the way, that's a really good conversation to watch if you haven't already. It's on my channel as a collaboration link. It's on Stefan's channel, but the theme of that discussion was very different. It was Stefan asking the question of, do we have the astrological potential this year and next for the discovery of another planet, a new planet? So it was a really interesting discussion. Have we got the astrological setup? Now, Jupiter expands and Pluto is linked to making big things small and small things big. So aspects between Jupiter and Pluto are very linked to things like the development of the telescope. 1609, both Kepler and Galileo developed their telescopes. Jupiter-Pluto aspect at that time. In 1981, there was a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. That was the development of the Hubble Space Telescope. Then 1994 to 5, another Jupiter-Pluto aspect. We got the first images from the cosmos, because you'll remember me saying in various videos, when Pluto moves through Aquarius, we discover much more about deep space. We go further in our understanding of the cosmos. The moon landing, 20th of July 1969. Incredibly, we had a Jupiter-Pluto-Uranus discovery moon, a quadruple conjunction. Quite remarkable. And so the development of the microscope was under a Jupiter-Pluto aspect. And so very recently, in the last couple of weeks, and Stefan was talking about this, something called the Vera Rubin telescope, incredibly powerful telescope, has been made operational. Again, under this Jupiter-Pluto opposition that's forming, and that will be exact on the 20th of July. But this will operate over 10 years, this Vera Rubin telescope, and it will take slices of photography of the cosmos. Much more detailed than we've ever been able to achieve. And so it will give us a much more detailed view of space, help us discover new planets. Really fascinating, right on time. So that's all of this. Those are themes all around Jupiter-Pluto. So, and just before we get to the first chart, just to highlight other things that are happening in the second half of July, we have on the 22nd of July, we have Eris moving stationary retrograde. Whenever a planet changes direction, its symbolism is magnified. Eris is all about the feisty street fighter, demanding truth, justice, equality, every voice to be heard. Very rebellious, very revolutionary, magnification of those energies, demanding a much more equitable society. That's on the 22nd, but you'll feel it several days to either side. On the 26th of July, we have Saturn moving stationary retrograde as well in Aries, 1445 of Aries. Now, I think very much of Saturn as traditional authority, and once it starts to move retrograde, it's traditional authority moving backwards, if you like. Not moving forwards, moving backwards. And so that's going to feed into this theme of the accelerated collapse of the old order. And then we have a very important grand trine in fire, which I will show you now. Okay, so grand trine in fire here. So this is really fascinating. This is happening on the 24th of July. I mean, the astrology for July is just absolutely jam-packed. So here we have a equilateral triangle between the Sun, Jupiter, 1 and 5 of Leo, the Moon at 523 of Sagittarius, Neptune at 4 of Aries. And we've actually got sextiles here from the Moon to Pluto and Uranus. This is a very long-running sextile here from Uranus to Pluto. As you know, that will definitely be over the next few years. But we actually have what's known as a kite formation. So let me deal with the equilateral triangle first. Now, wherever you get a grand trine in an element, it's very propitious, it's very positive, very fortuitous. And in fire, this is really visionary. Jupiter conjunct the Sun. I mean, this is Zeus, Zeus conjunct the Sun in Leo, where Jupiter is very happy. The Sun is the ruler of Leo. So this is visionary, futuristic, although I know time doesn't exist. So imagine we're moving to a higher dimension rather than a different point on the linear time scale. It's idealistic in its trine to Neptune. It's how do we create a more loving world, really? Because it's in Leo, which is heart-centered here. Sun, Jupiter, very much heart-centered. It's inspired, it's galvanizing, it's fast, fire is fast, it's excited, it's about truth, Jupiter, justice, and this is about exploration, the Moon in Sagittarius. If you know anybody with the Moon in Sagittarius, they're always on to their next adventure. It's very spontaneous. They want to go and explore. They're very linked into the interconnectedness of the universe. Let's go do it. Let's go further. Let's explore. So this is very joyful. And uplifting as a grand trine in fire. Interesting that the Moon is here at 5 degrees 23 of Sagittarius, is within barely a few minutes of the discovery degree of Ixion, which dwarf planet Ixion, which I'll be showing you in the next chart. This opposition between the Moon and Uranus is again the people waking up. Uranus, planet of awakening. Again, of truth coming to light, shocking. It's also to do with rebellion and revolution. This is highlighting things the people, the Moon, have already outgrown. So, and sort of standing our ground with this. So, and this kite formation, usually the planet at the base here of the two sextiles, Pluto here, is the kind of driver. That's the kind of the planet that has to drive the action with this grand trine in fire. So again, the most positive aspect of that is the power moving to the people, with all of these big themes becoming so very clear. We also have Mars in a sesquiquadrate here, 135 degrees to Pluto. This is tremendous focus, willpower, making things happen, linked to the power shift to the people, but it's also linked to innovation, new technologies, new social media platforms, new methods of communicating, etc. So this is, I really find this a very, very positive chart. So let us now look. Yeah, I mean, wherever you get any aspect between the moon and Pluto as well, you're going to get intensity on the part of the people. And we're going to see that even more strongly when we look at the full moon chart. So let's now look at that full moon chart. Here we go. So this is on the 29th of July. It's happening on the clock at 3:37 in the afternoon because we're still on British summertime, so it's an hour ahead of UTC. So this is an extraordinary chart, actually. Full moons are the peak of the moon cycle. Then they are really connected to where everything is very highlighted, things coming to a crescendo, a culmination. So see where 6 degrees, 30 minutes of Aquarius falls in your own chart, and see which house area that is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from our website, go to the link below, buy a 2-part video series, and that will teach you, it's not birth chart analysis, it's teaching videos that will teach you from zero how to find these points that I refer to in the updates and what it means for you. And that's the beginning of your astrological journey. So it's kind of step one on your journey. So here, what's very dominating is, again, we still have this Sun-Jupiter conjunction opposing the moon and Pluto. So we have the Jupiter-Pluto opposition tied up now with the full moon. So the full moon is really highlighting all of those themes that I've just been talking about. So this really suggests to me a lot of extremes, of things pulling two ways, of big polarities here. And again, I have a sense of the hot air balloon, as it were. There's so much fire here, and of course we're seeing so many heat waves. It's very hot here in the UK. Of course, generally people in their homes don't have aircon. We have aircon in offices, but it's quite unusual for people to have aircon in the UK because we just generally don't need it. It's hot here. Been exceptionally hot in Europe, been exceptionally hot in the US, with terrible wildfires in many places. Spain, Colorado, California. Please pray for all of those places. Fire moves very quickly. Pray for all of those places, for every living being to be safe and sound. Use my daily 7 p.m. meditation, where there's a call in there always for things, the extremes, to calm down. But because all of these outer planets, well, including Jupiter now, are in fire and air, and air, of course, is like bellows for the fire. Air is often to do with very strong tornadoes, winds, storms that fuel the fire. We are in a time of great extremes for natural and unnatural reasons. Some natural, because Gaia's going through her evolution. Now, so this, again, I actually see as very positive, because, again, we've got, big positivity, optimism, a feeling of unlimited possibility. We can do anything. We can achieve anything. And very heart-centered, expansive. We can see bigger and better possibilities for everyone and everything. And it's super positive. This other side tends to be very intense feelings on the part of the people. So individually and collectively, we will be feeling that. And what are we likely to be feeling intense about? Well, all the themes I've just talked about. The inequality of wealth, the inequality of power, etc. And very strong issues around rebellion coming to light. As I say, Eris goes stationary retrograde. It's magnified on the 22nd. And we had the moon opposing Uranus at the Grand Trine in Fire on the 24th that we've just seen. And now here we are at the 29th. And so this is also to do with issues of control and manipulation of the people, control by technology, Pluto in Aquarius, the shadow side. And therefore, those are going to be the issues. The shadow side is controlled by technology. The very positive side is people stepping into their power, taking their sovereignty, Leo in a very positive way, stepping into their power. Saturn and Neptune are in Aries, and this is the time to do that. We can't stay passive. We can't stay in victim. We have to step up. This is the time of a massive evolutionary link, particularly when secrets are coming to light. Mercury, quindicile Pluto here. And isn't it fascinating that Ixion here, one of the dwarf planets I absolutely love, is very tightly in quincunx, this green line, this 150 degrees to the Sun and Jupiter. And we've just seen that the moon at the Grand Trine chart at 5 degrees 23 of Sagittarius, that was conjunct the discovery degree of Ixion at 5 degrees 35 of Sagittarius. So that was what, 12 minutes of difference of exactitude. So Ixion is really quite highlighted here. And as I say, it's in this very tight quincunx here. So yes, this Ixion is a dwarf planet, as you know, I love, because this adds to the rebellious nature of Eris, Uranus, because remember, Uranus is in this long-term trine. It's just about to have its first of 5 trines to Pluto. This is again about power to the people. And Uranus is also trine to the moon, really helping. That's a very positive, flowing aspect to help us really step into what we have already outgrown and beyond it. We have outgrown these old systems. Ixion, I've had conversations with Alan Clay recently. He runs Dwarf Planet University. He has a super little book, actually, very small book on Ixion. He's doing these very small books on each of the dwarf planets, which are really helpful. I mean, just to give you a flavour, Prince Harry was born with his Ixion on his midheaven, very tight to his midheaven. And the symbolism is about, are the rules we are playing by the right ones? And boy, you can see how Prince Harry, has played that out in his life. Are the rules we are playing by the right ones? Because Ixion will challenge the current system and say, is this right? Is this how society should be structured? It is vigorously to do with truth, authenticity, passion, and it will just break beyond the normal mainstream to follow its own passion, its own spiritual focus, its own bliss and its own joy. Whistling a happy tune with a knapsack on its back is always how I think of Ixion, just cutting out of the normal mainstream and going off in its own way. And, that's very strong right here. So the quincunx we have here is a very long-running one between Hermit and Sedna, and I've talked about that many times before in the past. They are very, very powerful regenerative energies. Sedna, metamorphosis, but they're both to do with regeneration. We're seeing a lot of anti-age and longevity remedies, technologies coming online right now. So, very, it's also interesting here we have Mars in a sesquiquadrate to the moon. Could be angry people about any news coming out. Really, really fascinating. So let me, and of course the data centers, if we're thinking of that anger, Gemini is to do with neighborhood issues. It's your day-to-day life in your neighborhood. Pluto is the technology. It's very interesting that this very clear choice is coming up between, okay, do you follow the synthetic technology as your way forwards because it's easy and quick and convenient, or do you follow a more natural and organic route, which is what Chiron in Taurus is starting to signal, which is about, and also Venus here in Virgo, it's about the love of the earth, wanting to cleanse and purify the earth and be its guardian and its steward. So which end of the stick are you going to focus on? Because you can't focus on both ends at once. Just like you can't focus on love and fear, you can't focus on synthetic and technological at the same time you focus on organic and natural. I'd suggest you have to make your choice. That's up to you. I know which way I'm going, and you can probably guess which way I'm going. By the 29th, in fact, this happened on the 26th, we see that the nodal axis has moved into Aquarius, North Node, Leo, South Node. And so because the nodal axis always moves in reverse, it enters a sign from the end, as it were. So this is really going to reinforce all of the themes that I've been talking about with Leo Aquarius so far. It will emphasize, and this nodal axis will stay in Leo and Aquarius until mid-2027. It stays for about 18 months in each opposite pair of signs. So see where the North Node is falling in your chart, because that opposite pair of houses, is it, first and seventh, second and eighth, third and ninth, will be very activated for the next 18 months that we have this Leo Aquarius pairing, and go back 18 and a half years to when we then had Aquarius Leo pairing with the North Node in Aquarius, and see what was happening in your life in those areas of life then. For me, it's third and ninth. So I remember 18 years ago, I was completing my master's qualification in astrology, and now, of course, I'm doing my shamanic training. So it's very clear echo, and it tends to spiral up to a higher level. So yes, this is about, it will emphasize, the North Node in Aquarius will emphasize the humanitarianism, the collaboration, the community, the truth, the birth of the new social structures that are more horizontally based and less vertically based. And the South Node will highlight all those issues around entitlement and kingship, etc. But we may well see, while the nodal axis is at the 29th degree, because that's the anaretic degree of signs, more of an issue, more of a crisis around those things. So I can very easily see people in the public eye. I mean, we've had our 7th Prime Minister resign recently in 6 years. We've had the leader of a significant party in the UK stepping down in order to trigger a new by-election. He may not exit the political scene, but he's certainly triggered a new election to get the people to vote for him or not again. We are going to see a lot of people falling from the public eye, whether they are politicians or leaders or royalty or celebrities, as truth increasingly comes to light. So really, really interesting. What I also would just like to share with you, I'll stop sharing here, because we have a third chart to look at. Now, I shared this chart back in 2023 when Pluto entered Aquarius. So let me just get to that. Here we go. Pluto in Aquarius. This historic day of 14th of July, 1789, and this was when the peasants stormed the Bastille, took down the monarchy. Monarch was subsequently beheaded. End of monarchy in France. Louis XVI was living in his golden palace. The peasants were starving. And that cascaded into the following month in August, which was incredibly quickly. You'll have heard me talk about this before. I've talked about it several times. The Assemblée Nationale in France published what it called the Declaration of the Rights of Man, to give legal rights to ordinary people. That had never happened before. And this was the beginning of the basis for democracy, not only in France, but across Europe. And that was the beginning of a middle class, really. It took a lot of time, over the years, but ordinary people began to set up small businesses, artisan businesses, own farms, that kind of thing. And that had never existed as a social structure. It had just been the very rich elite rulers and the very poor ordinary people who were really ground down. And so, that was really historic, because France didn't go back to being a monarchy. It wasn't necessarily that, the times after that were perfectly easy, but it did initiate the very beginning of a template for a more democratic society. Now, this was the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius. It was in Aquarius from 1777 to 1798. So it was in Aquarius when this happened. So where it is now, it's at 4 degrees of Aquarius now, but it hasn't been fully in Aquarius, remember, since 1798. Jupiter is now in Leo. Of course, Jupiter comes into Leo every 12 years. Of course it does. So it's been in Leo many, 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 many times, and since 1789. It's just interesting that at the time of the storming of the Bastille, that Jupiter was also in Leo. It was making a big deal about monarchy, wealth and entitlement, because obviously Jupiter moves quite quickly. So in the coming months, it would have moved exactly into that opposition to Pluto, which is what we currently have right now. And it's interesting that Jupiter is going to be moving on to 4 degrees of Leo to make this exact basket shape that I've talked about in the basket video. And this is where Uranus, planet of revolution, was sitting at the time of the storming of the Bastille. And, as I've spoken about more recently, degrees become activated. They become hot, as it were. So that very eruptive planet at a very revolutionary eruptive time is being echoed, is being activated again right now. I just find this absolutely fascinating. And when I was talking to Stefan, it was quite remarkable how 6 degrees was also being highlighted in the discovery of new planets. Really, you've got to listen to that whole discussion, because it was very long and very detailed. It's a very different conversation, but 6 degrees was being highlighted, and I'll stop sharing this chart now. It was highlighted at the discovery of Uranus. It was highlighted at the discovery of Pluto in 1930. It was highlighted at the discovery of Chariklo. That was an extraordinary chart for Chariklo, where it was a 6-pointed star, and you had, I think, 6 planets at either 5 or 6 degrees of their signs, and you had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is the kind of eureka discovery aspect. It is remarkable how sixness, or almost sixness, 5 and some minutes, was emphasized so heavily. And, at the discovery of Chiron, Jupiter was at 6 degrees of Cancer. There's a sixness, and that's of course to do with the sextile, which is to do with harmony and opportunity. I was talking to my good friend Heather Ensworth about this, and I think we still have much to discover about sixthness as part of our astrological alphabet and vocabulary. But what is fascinating about the fourth degree, the basket, as I said, of Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto is in July. Take a look at that video. The four in astrology, you know, if you look at harmonics in astrology, which is an absolutely fascinating subject, the fourth harmonic is really about being the builder. It's about building for the long term, building from what has collapsed in the old to moving towards the new. And if you look at four in astrology, the division of the 360-degree circle is 90 degrees. That's a square. And that's known as a challenging aspect in astrology, but it's the grit in the oyster that creates the pearl. That's the activator. The pearl wouldn't happen without the piece of grit. So fourthness is an activator, a challenge for us, a catalyst, if you like, for us to build something new. And we know that we are the bridge builders. We know we are standing on the demolition site between the demolition of the old house and the building of the new. And what are we going to build? What are we going to build? Let us make it absolutely magnificent, with more joy, more love, more compassion, more gratitude than we have ever done before. Because every tiny piece of brick and mortar going into this new house, as an analogy, is down to us. Every single thought, every emotion, every action is down to us, because we are the bridge builders. And it's very, very highlighted in this extreme polarity at this very important full moon in Aquarius on the 29th of July, because we're just now tipping into August and the eclipses, trying to catch a breath in between. But just recognize this is such an accelerated period of evolution, and it's not going to come around again. I've been talking about this 2025 to 2027, not to suggest our evolution ends then or ever, but it's this very accelerated period where we're in the chrysalis. We're shifting from the caterpillar into the butterfly, a total change of being, where we become more multidimensional. We learn to live in zero time, you know, that we lose linear time. We operate from that. We operate from the hub of the wheel, because I think in 3D-ness, in our 3D world, hub, you know, the rubber hits the road, so we're looking externally and the kicks and knocks of life, and oh my God, can you believe it? And what's happened now? And, you know, they're external references, and we get buffeted, just like the rubber of the bicycle wheel gets buffeted over a very rough road. But if we can learn to come to the hub of the wheel, which is completely peaceful, completely still, completely joyful, then we can observe all around us and choose our multidimensional experience without stress. And I'd suggest right now that many people with that liftoff of the hot air balloon are feeling more peaceful, more calm, more joyful, more optimistic, more blissful, as a lot of the astrology suggests this month, if we can keep our focus on all the things that I talk about all the time: love, joy, compassion, gratitude. If you get tangled up in the distractions, it's a very different experience. So I covered a lot of ground in this astrology. It's kind of been over the jumps. I hope it's made sense for you, and of course, I hope it's helped. And really do check out the Basket and Beyond video, because this is not complete without that, for July, and also the conversation with Stephen Burns, who is doing amazing work and quite brilliant in all that he's sharing. God bless. Bye for now. Be back very soon again.